Our opening this time is a little different. In the background is the famous Ben Bulben near Sligo in Western Ireland, where we see the RPSI's Lough Gill Rail Tour behind the 440 number 171 on the 9th of May 1987. More of this in our special feature. BR's diesel fleet continues to shrink, the latest casualty being the Class 25 fleet. These medium-powered machines finally bowed out during March 1987, and we recorded some of their final workings. In the light snow of early March, 25278 works light engine to Blackburn. Also running light under Warrington Bank Quay Station is 25313 running into Walton Yard. Out of 327 members of the class, 15 survived at their planned withdrawal date of the 15th of March 1987. In the event, 11 of these carried on into the next week, this engine succumbing on the 18th. Most of their final work was around the northwest, and here 25901 speeds oil tanks to Stanlow. At Stanlow, 901 runs round her train and passes older survivor 25035, which sported a name for her last few weeks. "901 then took the train back in the twilight of her life. The North Wales coast was a popular haunt, and earlier the same ominous day, Friday the 13th of March, the second oldest survivor, with the early cab front, enters Llandudno Junction, the Holyhead train. she was to be withdrawn 2 days later, the official withdrawal date. Tamworth Castle lasted to the end, the last 25 in traffic until the 23rd of March, though others worked later. She was still likely to be used and start training thereafter. Class 27s are also on the threatened list, a pair here being seen at Carluke heading south. The train terminated at Carstairs at 5 p.m. and returned north. '27s have been limited to 45 miles an hour and banned from passenger work. 27049 and 046 worked a special from Edinburgh for members of the SPRS to Newcastle, where steamer 5305 took over. This was possibly the last 27-passenger run. cab ride aboard 47476 on the 0948 Crewe to Holyhead train takes us along the ex-LNWR North Wales coastline. Major stops on the route are shown on the map. The link was a principal main line of the LNWR, the most famous train being the Irish Mail. We departed from platform 6 exactly to time. As we leave the main line, we see Crewe North Box, behind which the Crewe Heritage Centre is being built for its 1987 exhibition.
On the right, yes.
Outside the BREL works can be seen withdrawn classes 40 and 47 locomotives. The line from Crewe to Chester has no intermediate station nowadays.
Driving that trailer.
Yeah.
Yes. No, we'll arrive eventually, yes.
Where are we now as a matter of interest?
This is Beeston Castle, this one.
Suddenly seeing the 74 signals for the first time.
The signal box on the right.
Oh, I see, yes. This is where the chip scores. Because its contrast range is much greater.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you get the sky, and if you get the contrast on edging on the sky.
Yeah.
The approach to Chester with the Manchester route coming in from our right has not been modernised and retains a 10-mile-an-hour restriction. Chester has recently had a re-signalling project completed.
These new
All the varieties, the bases are the same.
they're standardised on driving positions.
Yeah, the cab layout and the engine and transmission.
In former days, Chester was a crossing point for Great Western trains coming in from the southwest and going to Birkenhead to the north. GW and LNWR trains for London left in opposite directions. To the right is Chester DMU depot, the lines to the right going to Birkenhead.
I've always wondered whether Shrewsbury or Shrewsbury.
Well, I'm not going to say whether it's Shrewsbury or Shrewsbury, but it's Shrewsbury. As you see, this end of the station has all been remodeled, and from this point on it's 30 mile an hour.
What,
It's
this
Stations
used
Road.
to be slow.
Oh, yes.
Another 10 was it? Or
10 and 15 mile an hour. Chester TMD.
Is that where? Oh, it's quite a recent building. It's in 19. Where will that 47 have come from? Do you like it to be?
I would like to get say. I think
There's always a lot of
At Saltney Junction, the ex-Great Western route via Wrexham branches off to the left. This was recently singled.
No, a bit.
Has it worked out all right now? It's settled down.
There's a large goods yard here, Mole Junction.
Yeah. There was
7
a
day a
line,
week working.
another branch through to Mole.
Mole Junction sidings are retained for use by the engineers.
Came out to Wrexham.
Oh, we've got local signal boxes still. Chester.
Yes, well it's
The Chester scheme was local to the station. was
local
it?
to the station at the moment, yeah.
Are there plans to extend it up?
Oh, yeah,
the coast?
extend the signal station up to 3 years effectively.
It'll presumably be a signalling centre covering the whole coastline or whatever, will it? Or up as far as the junction left up
There's
there.
a recently built signal box at Hamburg Junction, which will join with Chester eventually.
Yeah. There's still quite a bit of work here. What is all this?
Well, it's just
This-
engineering terrain.
That was a peak.
Peaks have now been replaced by sprinters on Transpennine workings.
They're going off at the end of the week, aren't they?
Yes.
Going all over to sprinters.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the complete rakes as well. Seems ironic that it.
I think they got the trains alternating on this way.
Well, you get one every 2 hours or something like that. Yes, a sort of modern railways that the sprinter service will be quite a lot more intensive overall.
Yeah.
There are sprinters coupling and uncoupling in the station
Up and
and so
down,
on.
yes. From Sandy Cross, we revert back to 2 roads.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. This is the end of the 4 track. Where's our first stop?
Flint.
Is that far up?
No.
You near there?
3-4 minutes.
Rockcliffe Hall Power Station is no longer operational and was formerly rail-fed.
What is the line speed limit along here?
75 miles an hour.
75. Yet it's all welded track, not jointed. Yeah.
75% from Holly Head to Crewe.
Yeah.
Long well fed.
Yet it's only got a 75 limit. That's just the maintenance standard. Rockcliffe Hall. I see. That was. Those were the. Otherwise, this is virtually untouched. This thing coming through that bridge. Signal box on the platform.
Yes.
Signal, 2 footbridges. Lovely. That's a couple of 100 miles.
Oh,
isn't
yeah.
it? One getting right through to Scarborough is probably about 250 miles. I think.
I think it's might be 250, 270 miles, yeah.
Although much of the infrastructure has been removed, a great deal of the pre-modernization railway remains.
Few years, shall we say? They stick these sprinters, which are designed as local engines on them. There are no buffet facilities or anything. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been saying that on and off. These are just passing loops now, are they?
Yes.
What's the boat over there? That was a well dequadrified, I think, from the description, isn't it? Some miles. There's a rather nice signal box.
Yeah. One of the few left in the centre.
Positive. Oh, you've got a very bright looking class 56 there by those things. New livery. That's a 47, yes. The new red,
Great colours.
new red stripe along the bottom.
Working.
And it isn't rail connected,
Oh, yes,
it
it
is.
is. Yeah, no rail service in and out.
Rail traffic remains at Talaka at points of air.
Feeds Talacrum People call it Torlake.
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 Yes.
Real, that's 6-7 minutes.
Quite sure.
Yeah.
Right, we've got 7 minutes on the tape. So you'll just do that.
Prestatyn is the first of the major North Coast resorts, the sea being a short distance to the right of the station, as seen here.
Line through to Rill. We have two
Oh,
lines
is it?
in this direction.
Yes. Why is that? Is there any specific reason, or they just didn't take one out?
Never removed it. Operational requirements.
Yeah. It seems so funny that they've just done it on one track, but not on the other, or one direction. However, it's nice. It makes a nice station and stuff. I like their signals. Nice signal box there.
Yes.
They're well preserved, aren't they? It looks like they've actually been recently painted as well.
Oh well, we have to maintain them.
Sorry?
We have to maintain them, yes.
Yes. Actually, someone said that as soon as you see the signal boxes being repainted, it means they're allowed to be pulled down very soon.
People do say that.
Cynical. Often based on experience. Obviously got a big yard here.
Carriage ships there.
Carriage
Easy
ship?
lolly, yes. Often with day trippers.
Rill was a major intermediate station in LNWR days and boasted a large steam shed to the north of the station at the down end.
Had its own
And it used to
loco
run
shed
locals.
years ago.
Sorry?
On the right, had its own loco shed
Oh,
years
did it?
ago. Yeah.
Amazing.
At Abergele and Pensan, loops remain where the line had once been quadruple from Rill. Approaching Colwyn Bay, the sea comes right up to the line side, the town being viewed across the bay.
Well, this was all You'd think that today
We stopped at Colwyn Bay. The line from here towards Llandudno is on a new formation, as a new dual carriageway road was built recently, which requires the removal of the railway to the north.
that's my big concern always.
Notice the time.
Oh yes. Is that a particular interest then?
Yeah, the sites, Manifesting Railway and the Sprinter link up when the Sprinter came
Oh
out.
yes, I remember, yeah.
Llandudno Junction is the principal station on the line, serving the branch to Blaney-Festiniog to the south and Llandudno town to the north. The yard is still busy and boasts a locomotive shed, as seen in our Class 25 feature earlier.
They're on strike?
Yeah.
All these road workers?
Is this building the new road through here?
Yes.
New tunnel? In a tunnel?
This is where the new tunnel is going under the river, yeah.
Why not a bridge? That seems unusual. Is it conservation?
No foundation.
No foundation? No.
Again, the railway has been moved.
Oh, I see. It used to go up there, did it?
It was in a curve.
Yeah. Isn't that just the other side of this?
We're replacing a platform station. Conway.
Perhaps best known landmark on the route is Conway Castle, where the line passes through the tubular bridge with its castellated ends, and behind the castle itself, a new station is being constructed here.
See the new platforms.
Yes. Is that a completely new station? then?
Brand new, yes. Oh, it was in June.
There presumably was one here once upon a time.
Yes. Tappenmar Station.
Sorry?
Tappenmar Station.
Penman Mall.
Railhead here, where we
Yeah.
take a lot of our stone for
Oh, I
engineering
see.
work.
Yes.
Recently been modernised.
56, isn't it? Well, the stone plant has.
Yes. Very efficient now.
Is that not an engine shed? Or a goods shed?
Good shed.
Final station on the British mainland is Bangor, approached through tunnels each end.
This is a well-known station as well, isn't it?
Pardon?
A well-known station
Bangor
as well.
Station, yes.
Traffic station to make a model of, being between two tunnels. All 7190. Oh, it's not a.
The station used to be the junction for the Carnarvon branch, the rump of which was used for the Prince of Wales's investiture before closure. At the time of the disastrous fire to the Britannia Bridge, a railhead was re-established here to maintain the services to Anglesey.
My cameraman should be there filming us.
Wouldn't be surprised if it's not there.
Well, yes.
2 hours.
It's like hell, the man was the cathedral there.
The Britannia Bridge now carries a single line and a road overhead.
As you can see, you've got two
Yes. Glass, now with.
Marcus Anglesey on the statue on the top. There has been,
We're on Anglesey now.
yes, there has been a comment in the press recently
Yeah.
with regards to us altering the name,
Yes.
lengthening it. It is not true. You
Not
can actually
true.
not true.
So 47431 214. Is empty for 899.
First station on Anglesey is the celebrated tiny station with the long name, usually known simply as Hunfair PG.
The name on the
With its snake, with its signs, yes.
see the
The The driver of the Pacer unit, now in use on local trains, was our driver's brother.
Dorking Station. See, you've got platforms either side, crossing staggered.
And level crossing
Right,
gates.
yeah.
What a lovely station. Lovely station. Completely different to anything we've seen before. Coming along here.
Another halt. What they dropped.
Oh, I dropped a box, isn't it?
Rosneager Station is situated just before an RAF station, which sported Red Arrows aircraft as we passed.
Little station there, Rossniger. Halt.
Our destination, Holyhead, is located on a separate island, Holy Island, at the west end of Anglesey.
Lovely to see.
It's joined by a causeway, with both railway and road on it, separated by a wall.
So you can't see the roadway, well.
You'll see it now over that gate. High in the gate.
Oh, yes.
Makes you pay.
Oh, I see, yes. Here's off road.
This van, just outside the bridge. Down here we had the Holyhead, beside Milton. We had Holyhead Airport for a short period.
An airport?
Heliport, yes.
Well, because of the cut off of the bridge, or
Right hand side, yes.
what are these buildings on the left? They look like some modern railway sheds. They weren't. It could be a water tank plant. It's a lovely water tank, isn't it?
Just go up to the left there, press box. Under the bridge now. On the right hand side is the access to the railway shed.
Be allocated here, or they? Are they just?
As we approach Holyhead, the engine sheds and facilities are on our right. The Class 08 waited to take our coaches off.
Oh, is it all free?
Handy place to
Holyhead.
have the multi-power service and maintenance.
Yes,
because
that's
of,
very much just come in. So this set actually goes right the way back through to use?
Yes.
There we are, alright.
For modern archive, we turn our attention to Cornwall, starting at Penzance, the most westerly station on BR. An 08 is bringing empty stock out of the station, unusually including Mark III coaches. First stop out is St. Erth, junction for the St. Ives branch, of which a DMU is seen running. On most Cornish branches, the West Country version of Pacers, known as Skippers, are now used, so this is now a rare sight. The St. Ives branch is passenger only and is a basic railway without run-round facilities. Truro, the old Great Western atmosphere still prevails. A Class 50 leaves for Penzance as a skipper Class 142 waits to run to Falmouth. Cornwall is famous for its viaducts. This example is on the Falmouth branch, the skipper heading north to Truro. At Bungullow, the main line has been singled. This is the midday parcels train from Penzance, with a Network 50. Fresh out of works and Ajax clean, surprisingly not in network livery, 50046 failed on the other side of this bridge, apparently with radiator trouble. Coming up the branch from Parkendilloch comes one of the county's staple traffic trains. The wagons convey China clay and are the first of a modern generation which will finally replace the old four-wheel wagons which currently dominate the traffic. On the Newquay branch, Gunbarrow is a major China clay installation. Here the traffic remains the provenance of four-wheel wagons. These are coded clay hoods, but are universally known as hoods. A recent contract has been drawn up between BR and English China Clay to eliminate these within the next year or so. The Newquay passenger service is now operated with skippers. Here, a Newquay-bound unit picks up the token for the single-line section to St Denis Junction. Hoods are the last short-wheelbase, four-wheeled, wooden-bodied, open wagons still to be used in large quantities on BR, and their imminent demise makes them truly modern archive. At the east end of Par Station, a China Clay empties awaits the passage of the Mondays only UKF fertilizer train. The 37 and its China Clay empties will run to the north of Par Station and round to the right of this picture onto the New Quay branch. Par Station retains many Great Western features, and here we see a westbound passenger train approach. The Foy branch is retained for China Clay transshipment at Foy docks. This is an empty train running north on the branch. This clay train is running east through Lostwithiel Junction for the easternmost China Clay branch. This is the line to Moores Water and Loo, and can be seen leaving the main line to the left top of the picture. Loo passenger trains use a separate station at right angles to the main line. Moores Water Viaduct dominates the background as a 37 brings one of the twice-daily China Clay trains from the workings beyond the structure. The piers of the original Brunel wooden viaduct stand alongside its stone replacement, which carries the Cornish main line. A fierce gradient leads from the branch to the main line at Liskeard Station. The Railway Preservation Society of Ireland ran its 20th two-day rail tour in May 1987, and as one of its organisers said, in the best Irish tradition, it ran over 5 days. We recorded the main events over the weekend of the 9th to the 11th of May, and here see 440 number 171 in the Dublin suburbs as she started the tour on the Saturday. Heading west-northwest from Dublin towards Sligo, the first water stop was at Enfield. The line is single with passing loops. Number 171 was a last-minute replacement for LMS Design 264 tank number 4, which failed just before the tour with leaking tanks. Number 171 was prepared in 2 weeks, but had not been run in. In Roscommon County, the 440 is seen just after leaving Boyle. Only one photo run past was undertaken that day, and number 171 gave a good display on starting. At Sligo, the beautifully preserved stock was taken for servicing by a diesel, whilst number 171 was turned. The Sligo line was dieselled in 1956, but all steam facilities were retained. Early Irish diesels were single-ended and needed turning. The stock is as notable as the locomotive. Many Irish railways were subsidiaries of English companies, and LMS appears on some of the RPSI's rigs. After the train terminated at Sligo on Saturday, 2 shuttle services were run for local passengers. Watering facilities remain, if a little frayed, and a stone-built shed is also still in use. The shuttle runs were on Saturday afternoon, the engine reversing at Ballymote, the first crossing loop on the main line. As the second shuttle returns, tender first, it's interesting to note that the passengers were all general public rather than the main tour participants. Returning from Sligo on the Sunday morning, the 440 slowed at Boyle for the token before blasting through the station. She was to run to Dublin, where the second locomotive, number 85, was to take over. Number 85 took the train on north from Dublin on the Dublin to Belfast main line. She stopped at Dundalk to allow passengers to alight who did not want to go to Northern Ireland. Number 171 followed 85 up the main line with 3 coaches, which the latter had brought down earlier that day. On the Monday morning, number 85 is seen after an unscheduled stop. The locomotive is a 3-cylinder compound and was often referred to as the Irish Schools class. Approaching Antrim, 85 slows to pick up passengers from the line-side buses, a concept pioneered by the RPSI some 20 years ago. Our final view is of 85 on the Antrim to Bleach Green Junction freight line, which gives access to the RPSI base at Whitehead. The total steam mileage on this tour was 580. Whitehead, the RPSI has workshop facilities where its 9 locomotives are restored. This is the only remaining Irish mogul out of 54 of various classes. She was built for the Dublin South Eastern Railway and was originally number 15 on that railway, as seen on her tender. She only carried the number for 3 years, becoming 461 for the rest of her existence. This tank was built by Bayer Peacock in 1949 to a 1920s design for lease to the Sligo, Leitrim and Northern Counties Railway, which was so impoverished it couldn't afford new drawings, let alone purchasing locomotives. 2 were built. The RPSI are to run a number of rail tours this year, including the Portrush Flyer and Bangor Bell. Numbers 4 and 184 are expected to be in service again soon, and with far less restrictions on mainline running than on BR, these are surely a must for steam enthusiasts, looking for something new and the variety and fun which seem to be disappearing in the UK. We weren't the first to film Irish variety. Throughout the 50s, Cam Campbell visited Ireland frequently, recording these scenes for posterity. We're indebted to the RPSI for the information which follows. An example of the numerous J-15 class is our first view. This 044 tank was originally a Waterford, Limerick and Western engine, number 52, named Brian Boru. Note the oil tank in an open wagon. These D4 class 440s with outside frame bogies were built at Inchicore in 1908. Another J-15 is seen on the branch train to Burr, the coaches of which were quite famous. This 240 was a rarity. Another WLW loco, number 293, was built by Dubes in 1894. It did not usually work the Loughrea branch. The branch train connected at Tynan with the main Dublin-Galway line, and a Woolwich mogul arrives on a mail train. These were assembled in Dublin in 1928 from parts of Southern Railway end moguls built at Woolwich after the First World War. This train is crossing the River Shannon, the longest river in the British Isles. This branch closed in 1963. Number 666 was a Midland Great Western locomotive built in 1897. A sister machine was the last 240 to work in Europe in 1962. A J5 class known as kettle engines is seen on the Dublin-Sligo line, as covered by the Lough Gill Rail Tour, passing number 666 again. This station is now a wilderness. Ireland had many narrow-gauge lines, and the county of Donegal had 2 of these, of the 3-foot gauge. This is the County Donegal Railway, which closed in 1959. Locomotive Alice was a Class 5A 264 tank and was built in 1912 by Naismith Wilson, and the route she's following is from the railway's headquarters at Stranraer to the town of Donegal. The County Donegal Railway had no guards vans, so passenger vans were used on all trains, making them all mixed trains. Our last shot on the County Donegal is of Erne, a 464 tank also built by Naismith Wilson in 1904. The Londonderry and Lough Swilly Railway closed in 1954. To the end, its locomotives were immaculate, and it boasted a unique class of two 480 tender engines. These were built in 1905 by Hudswell Clark in Leeds, and were the first of 8 couple locos in Ireland, and the only tender engines on the narrow gauge. At Newtown, a crossing point on the line to Letterkenny, 3 engines cross. The first is number 3, a 460 tank from Andrew Barclay in 1902, passing number 8, a Pacific tank from Hudswell Clark in 1901. The third is number 10, a Kerr Stewart 462 tank of 1904. 3 different suppliers in 4 years. Back on the standard gauge, a Metrovic 1955 built Class A diesel is on the Dublin South Eastern Railway main line. At Wooden Bridge Junction, 060 number 445 is a Dublin South Eastern locomotive built by Bayer Peacock in 1905. The coaches behind this 440 were originally the drum battery rail car, which only ran self-powered for a year or so in the 30s. Finally, we see a Great Southern Railway tank, built at Inchicore in 1933 and scrapped in 1959. The Bluebell Railway was the first standard gauge preserved line in the UK. Situated in Sussex, it's part of a line which used to run from East Grinstead to Lewes. Horsted Keynes was a junction for an electrified line to Haywards Heath on the Brighton line. The southern terminus is Sheffield Park. This is finished in London, Brighton and South Coast colours and features period artefacts of that railway. Notable are the wide variety of enamel signs on the up platform, which is a wooden structure containing a museum. Looking north from the footbridge, a train awaits departure. Sheffield Park is the main starting point for passenger journeys. It's also the company's locomotive headquarters, and here locomotives are serviced and renovated. The railway boasts a wide variety of southern motive power, including Blackmore Vale. Another bullied locomotive is the NRM's Class Q1 prototype, also currently out of service. Another odd southern locomotive is a USA class tank. The USA's predecessor at Southampton Docks was the LSWR Adams B4 class, and number 96 Normandy is the railway's most recent restoration. The locomotive was to be lent to the Swanage Railway during summer 1987. The line curves gently north of Sheffield Park, and here we see one of the demonstration goods trains operated on special events, hauled by the Standard Class 4 460 number 75027. Major engineering feature of the line is Freshfield Bank, and here we see the only currently working example of the Southern Schools class preserved in the UK climbing the bank. Nearing the top are the two Standard Class 4s. The tank came to the Bluebell from the Dart Valley, where it received air brake equipment, still retained. The only preserved example of Maunsell's Q-class rounds the curve approaching Freshfield Halt, the only intermediate stop on the line. The halt is by request only and is seen across the fields. The Schools heads north through the woods. The bluebells, which grow here, gave the route its nickname, which became the Preservation Company's name. Orsett Keynes is considerably larger than Sheffield Park and boasts 3 platforms. It used to be the junction for the line to Haywards Heath, which was electrified in southern days. The station is decorated in southern colours. One non-southern locomotive is the ex-North London tank, originally used in the suburban North London Railway. Baxter is currently the only industrial tank in use on the line, and is normally only used as a yard pilot, being too small for service trains. The Bluebell will always be associated with small tank engines, especially the SECR P-Class and Brighton Terriers. The latter are particularly appropriate, as the line was built by the Brighton, and these two are particular favourites with visitors. For 26 years, the Bluebell has operated over 5 miles of track. In its Silver Jubilee year, it announced a public share issue with the objective of extending north to join BR at East Grinstead. Much has been secured, but a great deal has to be done and money raised if the project is to succeed. West Hoathly Station is just an undergrowth over bare platforms, but the next station, Kingscote, has already been secured. Already it looks like a station and has been painstakingly restored. In Railscene 10 we featured some of the last steam trains on the narrow gauge in Portugal, filmed by Bob Docherty. We're completing the coverage by looking at the broad gauge tour. Despite what was said in Railscene 10, the tour was organised in the UK by the Locomotive Club of Great Britain, and featured special steam trains on both the broad and narrow gauges, together with some diesel traction. Participants were LCGB members from the UK and other European countries. The LCGB, with over 1,500 members, has been organising overseas tours for some 30 years, and in addition also arranges a varied programme of visits to places of railway interest throughout the UK. Details of how you can join the Locomotive Club of Great Britain appear at the end of this programme. The River Douro flows through the scenic wine-growing areas of northern Portugal. Along its banks threads a broad-gauge line of 5 feet 6 inches from Oporto on the Atlantic coast to the Spanish border. As part of the LCGB's tour in September 1986, number 041, a Bayer Peacock 062 tank engine built in 1890, hauled a special train from Regua to Barcadalva, seen here near Pinhal, one of the principal wine-growing areas. The river banks are terraced with vineyards, which produce the grapes for the port wine for which this area is famous. As the line approaches the Spanish border, the scenery becomes more barren. This route used to see international traffic until recently, when the Spanish section was closed. The service is a few rail cars per day, and the line is now under threat of closure. At Koa, an abandoned station and across the loop, the train stopped for photographs, recalling an era of former glory. The end of the line was at Barcadalva, once a frontier station boasting customs facilities, catering and accommodation. It's now a shadow of its former self, with only a ticket office open. The arrival of a steam-hauled train full of overseas visitors created something of a sensation in the sleepy village. The engine moved forward to turn on the turntable, the first to do so in over 10 years. It was by sheer coincidence that it was in working order, because the railway operators had not checked beforehand. In the heyday of steam, locomotives had to be separated from their tenders in order to use the turntable, as it was so short. For many years, steam locomotives in Portugal operated under electrified overhead wires. A novel solution was the addition of a wedge-shaped exhaust splitter, clearly seen at the chimney mouth. Although the water column still supplied water, the neck was rusted solid and could not swing over the locomotive tank. A resourceful crew borrowed an old piece of guttering from a nearby house, and some water actually found its way into the tank. And so the special left to Barcadalva, probably the last time it will bear witness to steam traction. Breaking new ground for mainline steam, Colapur opened a season of trains in Derbyshire, running to Buxton up the old Midland Main Line. She nearly didn't make it, as she set off a hotbox detector after a similar incident the previous work. From Burton-on-Trent to Derby, she ran at 20 miles an hour, but the amazement and relief of everyone was pronounced fit. Here she runs back to Buxton after turning at Chapel-on-le-Frith. Departure from Buxton was accompanied by hoots from the diesel, which hauled the train into the platform. The previous week, Collapure had run south over the Settle and Carlisle. At the end of this run, she suffered her hotbox. Most Travel's steam engine is one of the oldest mainline approved ones, Flying Scotsman. Here she's seen on the return of the Settle Carlisle Express, run both ways over the line, approaching Long Preston. Scotsman headed a Manchester to Scarborough special, but had assistance up the bank out of Manchester Victoria from a Class 31 diesel. "4472 also headed the most controversial trains, the Sellafield Sightseer, to BNFL's nuclear reprocessing plant on the Cumbrian coast. It was thought Scotsmen couldn't be turned at Sellafield, so City of Wells was provided to take the train back. In the event, the A3 was turned. The Giesel-fitted West Country opened the season's Scarborough Spar Expresses, here seen returning to York. On the famous viaduct is Mallard. The NRM's A4 was used on the two Friends of the NRM specials round the old SSE circuit and really showed her paces. On the return up the bank from Leeds northwards, Mallard seemed determined to break the record. Such was 4468's working that line-side fires were started all the way up the bank. Another SSC special was run by Mallard's fellow A4, Sir Nigel Gresley, celebrating its Golden Jubilee in 1987. It took a route via Selby and Hull to Scarborough. An earlier Gresley tour met with problems and was sent to Carnforth instead of over the Settle and Carlisle. On the preserved lines, the oddest thing was a Ginty tank in BR Express passenger livery. However, the Midland Trust 3F tank certainly looks the part. A welcome return was made by LSWR Drummond M7 tank number 53 or 30053. This very complete locomotive had been sold to the USA in 1964 and after years of trying was purchased by Southern Repatriation for use on the Swanage branch where she worked in BR days. A new railway on Tyneside is the Stephenson Railway Museum, at which the only working long boiler Stephenson tank engine broke the tape to inaugurate the project. The museum will in time have a working line and has examples of locomotives of northeastern importance, including one of the three oldest built survivors, Stephenson's Killingworth locomotive Billy. Back on the main line, 6201 Princess Elizabeth ran a rail tour to return to her base at Hereford. The White Rose started at York and went via Manchester. Leaving Chester, the LMS Pacific would branch south off the Great Western Line to Wrexham and Shrewsbury. Liz's shedmate from Hereford, King George V, became parted from its tender at Gloucester and could not work to Swindon for the borough's May specials. A large hole appeared in the track between engine and tender. Cluncastle also failed on the Saturday with bad coal, but on Sunday ran all 4 scheduled steam runs. Great Western runs have not been blessed recently. Dressluin Castle's last mainline tour was in snow with no heat. Passengers were upset. On the brighter side, steam returned to the Cambrian coast in May 1987. Hinton Manor and 75069 from the Severn Valley ran over the line in preparation for a series of rail tours. At the summit of the line, they took the token and ran down to Macuncliffe to stable overnight. On Friday the 21st of May, the Manor took the inspection saloon along the coast to Pithlui and is seen alongside the Dovey estuary. We had to get this one, the first steam engine over Barmouth Bridge for more than 20 years. The Manor ran on north of Barmouth, stopping at all stations for clearance trials. The trial a success, the Manor climbs south away from Fairbourne. We'll have a full feature on Cambrian steam in Railscene 12. In the other principality, Scotland, Black 5 5305 from Hull ran up the old South-West main line on her way to a season on the West Highland. Here she's just left a watering stop. Earlier in the run, 5305 had been supplied with a diesel pilot under the wires out of Carlisle. D200 remains popular on rail tours. Now she's the only surviving working class 40 on BR metals. Later on the same tour, D200 leaves Bolton for Manchester. D200's old stamping ground, the Settle and Carlisle, was again used for diversions at the May Bank holiday. This is the southbound Stranraer van train. At Bleemore, a Class 37 was stabled as pilot, a change from classes 40 or 45 of old. High-speed running was undertaken by Class 47s, this one leaving the northern portal of Bleemore Tunnel. At Dent, the northbound Royal Scot made a fine sight. Normally closed signal boxes such as Garsdale are needed when all West Coast traffic is diverted. On the West Coast, 89001 has started high-speed tests. prototype is based at Crewe and is seen on arrival with the test train. To celebrate 21 years of Intercity, the Class 86 was repainted in an approximation of its original livery and given its old number and crests. It headed the Pullman Rail Maroon set, now named Beryl and Carroll, and all in maroon. At Liverpool Lime Street, 60s-style miniskirts and beatniks showed that progress isn't always for the best. A laser show celebrated 21 years, whilst the 86 remained at the buffer stops. Whilst the West Coast showed its old style, the old East Coast frontline power visited the Severn Valley. Butterley provided a Deltic in Class 44 for a promotion on the SVR by BR's midline. Use on valley trains gave the original Peak the opportunity to stretch its legs, which it seldom has the chance to, and is seen here at Bewdley and climbing to Bewdley Tunnel. BR provided a sprinter for local services, seen leaving Arley. BR also provided a Class 20 on the Saturday and a 37 on the Sunday. The station announcements seemed strange for such a locomotive and train.
Train now arriving is the 11 o'clock departure for all stations to Bridgenorth. Please stand well clear from the platform edge as the train runs in. Train in the platform is the 11 o'clock departure for all stations to Bridgenorth. This train will call at Bewdley, Arley, Highley, Upslow and Bridgenorth.
Class 20s, 3 of them, featured on a special from Sheffield to Brighton. At Brighton, the names and special liveries were seen to advantage.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, my camera up there filming it, supposedly.
The train passes Preston Park Carriage Works as it heads north. The following day, 56033 featured on a tour of southern lines, returning via Hastings. Near Reading, the MOD system at Bramley closed in March. With secrecy no longer paramount, the Army allowed special trains to traverse the system. These were all Hampshire DEMUs. One Army Ruston diesel led the way round the system. Another closure took place in the northeast. The NCB closed its extensive system at Ashington, once a refuge of ex-BR Class 14s. The 14s had expired before the end, and BR 08s were hired for the final workings. Ending on a note of hope and going out with a bang, Corby reopened. Although special liveries were to be used on the bubble cars later, 2 standard blue and grey units were employed. It is to be hoped that this experiment will succeed.